Up next is Joaquin Montes. Joaquin earned his degree in microbiology from Texas A&M and joined the TCEQ Public Drinking Water Quality Team in 2001. He's currently on the Drinking Water Protection Team, helping with the implementation of new bacteriological monitoring database and with the submittal of electronic laboratory data. He's here to explain how you deal with multiple water sources, some of the potential costs involved with compliance, and a whole lot more. He's also a veteran of our teleconferences, so Joaquin, welcome back.
Thank you, Mike. Well, again, I'm here to talk about the things to consider, and hopefully I can help you prepare for the groundwater rule and help you reduce cost, which is the main important thing that I want to do here with this presentation. So again, you may be asking yourself already that, gosh, these costs are going to escalate pretty quickly. And I know you have a million questions right now, and the important thing is to be prepared for the groundwater rule and to reduce your cost. And by being prepared, you're going to reduce your costs significantly. And so as you see here, I've narrowed it down to the most important questions that you should be asking yourself. And here in this slide, the most important questions that you have, as just now, Matt covered the multiple groundwater sources and how you can use a triggered source monitoring plan for that. And then the hydrogeology, Sean Abels covered that as well. And I want to cover this new topic of sample history in the next coming slides. But also you have some options embedded in these questions that you want to ask yourself to help reduce cost. Which option is the best for my water system? So again, the three important questions that you can narrow it down to are these three important questions. Number one, what is my sample history? And this is going to be a very important question for you because it will help you decide which option is going to work best for you. Now, just because there's these three options doesn't mean that you're not going to use a combination of these, or you may only use one, or you just may want to not even worry about these options. But these are the questions that you want to ask yourself, and answer these questions as best you can so that you can find and pick the best option for your water system. Okay, the sample history here, you want to understand that not only are you looking at your distribution positive samples or whether or not you have distribution positives, you also want to know about your infrastructure for your water system. You want to make sure that if you don't have a lot of positives, then you may not have to worry about it. And the important thing here is that when you're dealing with the groundwater rule, there's only two important triggers that will trigger an action required by the water system. One, of course, is what Sean covered, where he covered about the field investigations, where the field operator or the field investigator goes out there and visits your water system, and then you see a significant deficiency. And if he identifies one, then you have to do some corrective actions with that. And Mark Michael will help you with those corrective actions that could be selected. And then the other trigger would be what Matt talked about. If you have a positive in your distribution system, then you would have to go sample each of your sources in operation. And hopefully the triggered source monitoring plan will help you with that in the next slide. So in this case, the triggered source monitoring plan will help you with these issues. So if you have multiple groundwater wells, you want to make sure you pick the best representative well for that, or you could possibly pick more than one well, as Matt showed you in his examples. And again, these examples are meant to be very basic so that you can understand and kind of get the concept. But we know in the reality of the real world that a lot of these systems are a little more complicated than some of the examples. But if you need help with that, we're more than willing to help you. We have developed guidance, and EPA also has a lot of guidance available for water systems. And the next issue that I would like to cover here is that if your well is in a hydrogeologically sensitive aquifer, or you have multiple wells in that, you definitely want to get the assessment information that we have available for you through the TCEQ, and we'd be more than willing to provide that for you. Now, another consideration with the triggered source monitoring plan is if you use chloramines as your disinfectant, you might not be able to use the other option of 4-log. And that's going to be on a case-by-case basis because of the storage. You may not have enough storage and you're providing the chloramine disinfectant. So typically, if you're going to go the 4-log route, as I'll cover in the next slide, you're going to want to be a free chlorine type disinfectant system. So in this next slide, I'll cover the 4-log. So 4-log, I want to make sure that you understand what that means. 4-log is 99.99% inactivation or removal of viruses. And treatment means inactivation or removal. And so typically the water systems are going to be able to provide that 4-log option, or are going to be able to go with that 4-log option. It's going to be the systems that provide disinfection of free chlorine. Free chlorine, or what we call, chlorine. I'm sorry. Chlorine is the best option for the 4-log treatment. Now, Jack is going to speak to you about the template that he has created that calculates what your minimum specified residual is. And that's a very important number, because that residual is the residual that you must maintain so that you can effectively inactivate up to 4-log treatment of viruses. So the other things you have to really consider with 4-log treatment is that, can you handle the compliance monitoring required with this 4-log treatment? And this could be costly for water systems as well, because some water systems may have to monitor continuously, and so that would mean equipment. And so equipment costs have to be considered in this option. And not only equipment, you also have to worry about reporting or possible reporting requirements with 4-log inactivation or 4-log treatment if you're using a chemical disinfectant. So not only do you have to worry about compliance monitoring, you have to worry about reporting and possible public notifications. And then the worst case scenario, if you do fall below the minimum specified residual and you fall below 4-log treatment, you could have possibly a treatment technique violation. And that treatment technique violation, as all violations typically, they require a public notification. So this is very important with this option that you consider that. And it's not saying that if you choose this option, that's the only option you have to go with. Let's say you have multiple wells. You can use a triggered source monitoring plan, and you can also say, well, in this section, I know I have problems with my wells, and so I'm going to go ahead and treat and take the proactive approach and use the 4-log treatment option for that. So in the next slide, the 4-log requirements for existing sources is a very important topic. And here, you have to provide the engineering specs and operational information to TCEQ in the form of a CT study. You're going to want to provide that to TCEQ for approval, and you're going to want to use the template that Jack Schultz provided or created for us. Brilliant engineer. And he provided that for you, and he's going to cover that next in the coming talk. And then also, you're going to want to monitor the effectiveness through a use of a worksheet called the Groundwater Monthly Operating Report. And you're going to want to use that sheet to calculate and make sure that you are abiding by that minimum specified residual, or what we call the MSR as well. So you're going to hear that term a lot. But again, the 4-log treatment is 99.99% removal or inactivation of viruses. And if you're going to use disinfection, that would mean inactivation of viruses. So 4-log requirements for new sources, the next slide I'll cover. In this case, the only thing different from the prior slide is that you have to be monitoring the effectiveness and reliability of treatment at least 30 days prior to placing your well online. And so that's the important key difference between those two slides, is that for new sources, you got to be checking the effectiveness and reliability of your treatment for up to 30 days prior to placing that source into service. And the next slide. So for compliance monitoring, as I spoke to you about earlier, is you're going to be required, if you're a water system that has less than 3,300, you would be required to take a grab sample daily and test it for the MSR, the minimum specified residual. You're going to want to make sure that you meet that minimum specified residual for the smaller population. So less than 3,300, you're going to monitor your disinfectant residual daily. And then you must maintain that specified TCEQ minimum specified residual. For populations of greater than 3,300, you're going to need to do that continuously. You're going to need to continuously monitor that residual for systems that are greater than 3,300, and you must maintain the minimum specified TCEQ residual. And the way we define continuous monitoring, I know I've had that question before, is 1 reading per every 30 minutes, which does not deviate from the normal requirements of the surface water monitoring and reporting. So we stuck with that same standard, so it should not be any different than that. But I just wanted to make sure people understood how we define continuous monitoring for the disinfectant. And again, for 4-log treatment, it's typically going to fit, or it's typically going to be a viable option for water systems that use free chlorination as their disinfectant. So in the next slide,